Well, hey guys, thanks for tuning in to Season 2, Episode 4 of the Straight Out of Prison podcast. My name is James K. Jones, and this is my story.
And I am Haley Jones, and now his story is a part of my story.
So we're calling this episode, we're just going to call it Church, because this is like, we talked about my experiences growing up in church and, how I was I wasn't going to do any of that, but obviously, after I came into a relationship with Jesus, he started to change, some of my thinking on that. And then in the last episode, we talked about, I went to prison in Alabama. I was at Kilby, and I was there a hot second. And they came and told me they were putting me in lockup because the DA in Shelby County was seeking a life without parole sentence against me. And then we talked about how hopeless that was. But then the miracle at the end of it, the way that God set me free from that very real prison with just one little flash of a memory and a word. So I'm still kind of reeling from that because that was like something unbelievable.
Right. I mean, life without parole means the X after your name, which means you are never leaving.
Yeah, it means you'll die in prison no matter what.
And it was the 3 strikes you're out rule.
3 strikes you're out rule. But then, I had studied about Joseph and, in the Bible, how God had a plan for him. And even though step by step it looked like that plan was never going to happen, it ended up happening. And just how he gave me one word on a technical sentencing guideline. When I called my lawyer, they immediately dropped the charges and let me go. I mean, they didn't let me go free. I was still in prison, but I wasn't on life without parole row.
Yeah.
In that hopeless place. Because those guys, I would have been there probably a year and a half, maybe more, until my case got settled in Shelby County. So that was just started out as a depressing, scary, like, oh my gosh. And it ended up as almost like something you would read in the Bible. Like, I'm locked up. What I'm going to do, I'm going to choose to trust you, and then boom, it's over with, just like that.
Crazy.
So they took me from there. They moved me when I got out of there. Remember I talked about being in the big dorm that looked like a Sam's or Costco?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
For some reason, I didn't have to go back there. They moved me to what they called the chapel dorm, and it wasn't a chapel in there. It was just they called it the chapel dorm because it was right next to the chapel.
Oh, you mentioned that last episode. Yes, I remember.
Yeah, so this dorm was a little more cushy. It was very isolated from the rest of the compound. There were 2 separate dorms there, but we shared the same yard. So I wasn't locked up with, 1,500 guys. I was more like locked up with like 100. So it was just a different experience. Mm-hmm. I guess in the Alabama Department of Corrections, you could say that dorm was cushy. Kind of like, remember when I was in Florida, I talked about BCI?
Oh, yeah.
And how, the D dorm had good conditions there. This one was kind of like that. I mean, it was, there was not violence. It was not too crowded. It was not too, it was prison, don't get me wrong. But there was something working on the inside of me that I didn't have before that just kind of made all that other stuff kind of pale in comparison to it. But after I moved to the chapel dorm, conditions were great. It was a little isolated. I think, I was still very skeptical about church. I was very skeptical about, like, preachers. It's because of my past and the way I grew up.
Right.
Really, my only, church thing I'd ever been involved in, I went to a Baptist church growing up, and then there was this girl that I liked one time when I was in 7th or 8th grade. They went to a Assembly of God church, and her mama said if I wanted to date her, I had to go to church. So I was like, I was an atheist by this time.
You're like, okay, let's go to church then.
Let's go to church. But we didn't go to a Sunday church. We went to a Wednesday night church, and the preacher started screaming and hollering and spitting, and he turned red. And then this lady got up and started speaking in tongues, and I had never saw anything like that before, so it freaked me out, but in a funny way. Like, it really didn't bother me. I got tickled, and I started laughing. And then her mama started, throwing me dirty looks, and then she started laughing, and she had, 4 brothers and sisters. They started laughing, and then our whole row was laughing. And then the preacher was making laps around he was, running around the whole congregation, like a crazy person, and I just thought it was funny. But anyways,
How old were you when that happened?
maybe like 14.
Okay.
But obviously, I didn't get to date her after that, so I was she was done with me. So, but my only like experience with church was like the Baptist church. Then I had saw that one time, and I was like, those people are crazy. Like, I'm not doing that. I mean, even if I was ever going to do anything, I wouldn't be doing all that, jumping up and down and hollering and
Oh, the assembly of
the
God.
speaking in the tongues and all that
Yeah.
stuff. And then one time when I was like 10 or 11, my dad was dating a Catholic girl, and we went to a Catholic mass. It was actually here in Birmingham, the real pretty St. Paul's downtown.
Mm-hmm.
We went to a mass on Christmas Eve. It was the only Christmas Eve I was ever with him. And I remember how it was just beautiful. Like, you know, like the ceremony part of it. And it was very pretty. But then, you know, she went up there to get the wafers and drink the wine. And
Communion.
Yeah. And she told me I couldn't go because I wasn't Catholic. So I was like, well, you're living in sin with my dad. So, I mean, why do you get to go and I don't get to go? So I was just turned off to all the... I didn't want religion. I didn't want anything to do with religion. But I had this experience I'd had with Jesus, and I had my Bible. And I was studying it, and I was learning. And I was just excited. But at the same time, I still was not ready to take that step and be like a church person. Does that make sense?
Absolutely. Well, I want to talk about, because it's something we have talked about right after this time, and I think it was about this time, but you can clarify something about your name changing.
Oh, that's cool. That's a very cool. I mean, it was at this time too. So I was born James Keith Jones Jr. That's my legal name, birth certificate, social security card. But that was like a last minute name for me because my mom had a name picked out for me. Brian Keith was what she wanted to name me. And she has a sister, Ann, that had a baby 3 weeks before me, and she named that baby Brian Keith and took my mom's name. And so my mom was like, well, screw it, we'll just name him after his daddy. So they named me James Keith Jones Jr., which made him happy. I mean, he wanted that anyways. But when I was born, because my dad went by James. My granddaddy's name was James Cecil Jones, so there are a lot of Jameses going around. My granny nicknamed me JJ when I was born, my dad's mom. And that name stuck with me. So that was my name growing up. I'm JJ Jones. That's who I am. Now, my dad called me Keith because that was my middle name. And then I think my Meemaw down in Phoenix City, she would call me Keith and some of them. But I wasn't around them that much, so I thought it was weird. You know, they're just calling me that name. I didn't really answer to it. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I mean, your family that I know now, they still call you JJ, like your mom, your aunts, your cousins, they all call you JJ. And I've actually heard a couple of them, I can't remember which ones, but at some points call you Keith, refer to you as Keith, which is so
I think
weird
that would
for
be
me.
My Aunt Barbara, I think, still calls me Keith. I
Yeah.
think she's the only one left that still calls me Keith. And my Aunt Brenda, she calls me Keith. But the rest of them, I'm JJ.
Yeah.
So when I started first grade, my mama told me, they're not going to call you JJ in school. So I said, why not? That's my name. And she said they don't do nicknames at school. So from now on, when you're in school, they're going to call you Keith. Keith Jones. That'll be your name. So I was like Lula's age now. I was like so confused. Like, why can't I be who I am? Like, why do I have to be Keith? But, you know, you get used to it. And that was my name in school. That was my name. If somebody asked me my name, I would say Keith, Keith Jones. So it was the JJ was, I guess, reserved for like family and close friends call me JJ. Mm-hmm. And then, you get to be, 13, 14, you start thinking that's silly anyways, to have a name that's not spelled. It's just J dot. So I was cool with the Keith. And then, I went to prison. They call you by your last name in Florida. And really, in most prisons, they call you by your last name. So I was Jones. But there are a few people in Florida that call me Keith. I think Valenza called me Keith. Big O, to this day, still calls me Keith because that was my name. There was a time, it was in 7th grade, I started junior high school, I guess, where they send you, you're done with elementary school, so they send you for 7th and 8th grade.
Yes.
The first day of school, were calling everybody's name, giving them their assignment, and they didn't call my name. And I went and told them my name, Keith Jones, and then they were like, oh, James K. Jones. So I was like, yeah, well, I don't go by James. I don't use James. And there was a little bit of confusion, but they put me in a special ed class. And I knew the special ed kids because I'd been with them in 6th grade. And I was just like, oh my goodness, I didn't do good on that CAT test or essay, whatever test we took at the end of the year.
Right.
So I remember I sat there all day thinking, what happened, I always thought I was, because I was in advanced reading and stuff. I wasn't so good at math, but I was like, I guess that test showed that I'm special ed. Like I'm not.
You're struggling.
I'm stupid.
Well,
I mean, but it was really bothering me. And I went home that day and told my mom, and she was confused. So she went back with me the next day, and they actually put me in the class for James Kevin Jones, who didn't show up for school that day. He was in special ed, and I was James Keith Jones. So then they got it all figured out. But I remember that was a rough day, like to be 13, 14.
right.
And I'm not saying there was anything wrong with the kids. I love the kids in there. I mean, I knew them. I'd went to school with them, but it was just like the name thing always got everything confused. So when I got to Kilby, I started meeting people. There was a few other Jesus followers, and then there was a lot of people that had the jailhouse, the religion that my mom was afraid that I had. But they were reading my name off my name tag, and it said James Jones. So they started calling me James. And there was something in me that just was like, don't correct them. Like, don't let that be your name. And so it was weird. I had something new on the inside of me. So I kind of had a new life. I was in a new place, and now I had a new name. And, I've been using that name ever since.
Yeah,
And
that's all I've known you as.
It's been 24 years ago. But it was weird because I would read the Bible, and like in the Old Testament, like Sarah's name was Sarai or something like that, and God changed her name to Sarah, which meant like mother of nations or something. And Abraham's name was Abram. He changed his name to Abraham. And then in the New Testament, Peter's name was Simon. Jesus changed his name to Peter. And then, like probably my favorite one was the Apostle Paul. His name was Saul. They called him Saul, and then they started calling him Paul, which I felt like I identified with because he didn't actually get his name changed to Paul. Saul was his Jewish name, and Paul was his Roman name. So it was the same. It was like he was taking on a new identity after he came into faith in Jesus and started writing the Bible.
And that's how you felt. Like you felt like
I felt a kindred with him. Like okay, and he's besides Jesus, he's my favorite person. I love me some Apostle Paul. He was the real deal. But anyways, that was interesting to have a new name. I'm James now.
Yeah.
And I started, going by that, and that's been 24 years ago. But it was just, I don't know, it was cool. I mean, new me, new life, new name.
New name, new everything. That's awesome.
And then I started trying to go to some of the chapel services. I'm trying to remember, like, it's just what they did. Like, they had a lot of chapel services at Kilby because it was a transitional camp. Mm-hmm. And it's right outside of Montgomery. And besides Birmingham, Montgomery probably has more churches per capita than anywhere in the world, because
right.
this is the Bible Belt. We ain't in Florida no more. And they had a chapel service almost, not every day, but just about every day. They were doing something up in there. And I wasn't really moved to do a lot of that because I was still so skeptical. But I went to one, and they started asking us, have we been baptized? And for me, I'm very literal. And
also you want to do things the right way.
Yeah, I need everything. I need all my I's to be dotted, my T's to be crossed, and all the things.
In all categories.
Yeah, I mean, well, you're my wife. You know that better than anybody. You don't know me. But remember I told you right after I had an experience with Jesus, I went to the jail bathroom and he wet my head in the sink. Mm-hmm. And I remember being confused, like, why did you do that? I mean, because I didn't understand it and I didn't have anybody explain it to me. But I'd been reading the Bible with them for like 4 or 5 months, so I knew everybody was getting baptized, but I never saw anybody in the Bible go in the bathroom and get their head wet. So I felt like I needed.
Because when he did that, he said, "Okay, now your life's going to be better."
He said everything's going to be better now, son. And I was like, "How?" I mean, this is so awkward. So I signed up to do baptism with the Church of Christ, which they really stood out because I clapped in one of their services, and they gave me a dirty look, like, you don't, Church of Christ, we don't clap hands. So I'm like, well, have you read the book of Psalms? I mean, it was just, denominations have their different, like, things that they do, and I was about to get a crash course and all that, because in prison, you get it all. You get it all. You get I want to do one episode where I talk about, like, different denominations and doctrines and dogmas, but
I don't know if it's just me, but I have noticed just, since we've met, that you do tend to know quite a bit about several denominations that I definitely things that I don't know.
Well, no, that's because later on, not right then. Like I was studying the Bible then, but later on, I like dove into church history. Like,
well, I think it was not only it's kind of like what we're getting into talk about now. Yes, I'm sure it was your diving into church history, but also just your experience with these different denominations that were coming in the prison trying to, I guess, witness or disciple.
They were doing prison ministry. I mean, there was a lot of good ones, but there was a lot of bad ones too.
Yeah.
I mean,
I mean, your experience, I'm just saying, like, has definitely taught you things that I don't think the average person would know about so many.
Well, I wanted to know. Like, how did we get here? But I'm like that about everything. I want to know how I got here.
Right.
How does this work? How's it made? But I signed up to do the Church of Christ thing. They did like one of those formal baptisms where they have a ceremony. They put a white robe on you, dunk you in the baptismal thing. That was kind of creepy because it looked like a casket.
A pool, or?
It looked like a casket, like it was a wooden thing. They took the lid off, and then I was like, I don't want to go first. Like, but I think I did go first, and then I had the thought, well, at least I ain't getting in nobody else's water, so this is good. But they did the baptism thing. They gave me a big certificate, and I remember thinking, I still didn't think like it did anything much because I didn't really understand it. Mm-hmm. I mean, later on I would learn that baptism is a symbolic thing of what happened on the inside of you, and you're laying your old life down and you're rising up into a new life. But there would later on be a lot of confusion with baptism. That wouldn't be my last one, but we'll talk about that later on. But to take us to where I was then, I was confused, and I wanted to know. And I wanted to do it right, and I did not want anybody's religion. I was very dogmatic, and I don't care what we do. If it's Jesus and it's in the Bible, then we can do it. If it ain't, I don't want any part of it. Does that make sense?
It does make sense, but it's so ironic to me that you go from, I mean, I just got the visual of you tearing Bible pages out, smoking with it, to now it was the Bible way or no way, and you weren't even listening to anybody. I mean, just the stark contrast of that visual of you throwing Bibles away and smoking with the pages to now being dogmatic on the other end of it. Well,
I didn't believe in any of that stuff. I thought it was stupid. I just thought it was stupid. But I'd been exposed to church, and I'd been exposed to a ton of religion, especially in Florida. Like in Florida, you don't just get Christian religion, you can get all the religions. You get, however many religions there are on 7 continents.
Oh, we talked about that because you either get the carpet or you got different things depending on what
and I was
faith
Baptist, so I got a King James Bible. That was all I could have.
And you were bummed about that.
Yeah, I wanted to be a Muslim so I could get a rug.
Right. Just because you wanted to decorate yourself.
I wanted a Aladdin rug for my room. But that was just, it was like that. I just didn't want any set, I didn't want anybody to label me, set their religion on me, call me a Baptist or a Catholic or a Methodist or I didn't want any Church of Christ, I didn't want none of that. And I felt like, well, if I don't want none of that, then I shouldn't be going to church. So there was, I guess the first 3 or 4 months, there was a lot of tension with me about just the establishment of the chapel and prison church. But there were a lot of good people that came in there that just started teaching me stuff, and it was giving me this is how you do it, and I learned how to pray. I learned how to do a deeper dive into the Word and learn. And then I won't say I ever became unskeptical, because even to this day, I'm still a bit of a skeptic.
Yeah.
About religious stuff, because I just feel like, why are you here? What are you going to get out of this? Kind of deal.
Yeah.
But that's where I was then. But there was not anybody at this point, there would be later on, there wasn't anybody at this stage early in the game that I trusted enough to take their advice, to sit and let them teach me, because I didn't want them to. I wanted to learn on my own, and I wanted it to be in the Bible, and if it wasn't in the Bible, I didn't want it.
But with that being said, you also just said that there were some people that you, I guess, felt good about listening to.
And there were several. But we're talking about right when my first initial like dipping my toes in the water. Like I was all in for Jesus. Like I was 100%. This is real. The scripture is real. It's changing my life. Y'all can argue over all the things, but I know what happened to me on the inside. And now this time, I know what just happened to me when I was locked up in that little coffin back there where they were going to lock me up for the rest of my life, and I've been set free from that. So I felt like I had a knowledge of his power and that he was real, but I just didn't want the church stuff.
Yeah.
And, that led me into a deeper study of what the church actually means. The word church means ecclesia in the Greek, and it just means God's people that are called out from the world. So we're sitting here in our basement recording this podcast. I am the church because I belong to Jesus. You are the church because you belong to Jesus. So we're having church. Or we are the church. We're not having church. We're being a church.
Yeah.
But anyways, I feel like I'm digressing a little bit. But there was a lot of, in this season, there was just like, remember we talked about my first Christmas being locked up and just the pain and just the agony of that and Thanksgiving and all this stuff. This was, for me, like a season of new firsts. But instead of it being awful, this time around, these new firsts were beautiful. Even though I was in prison, my circumstances hadn't so much changed. I mean, actually, being in prison in Florida is better than being in prison in Alabama. But this was different because it was just like, I won't say I had a new mind, but I would definitely say I had a new heart. Like something had changed on the inside of me. And we were approaching Christmas. And it just felt like special. Like in a way that it hadn't felt since I was like 3 or 4 years old. Like it was just like, here comes Santa Claus, but not Santa Claus. Because, Santa Claus ain't real. But it was beautiful. My first Christmas, and there was beautiful. There was a lot of little stuff. I remembered thinking the last Christmas I'd had with Patrick when I worked with him, I guess that would have been 4 years prior to that, Christmas of 1992. He was heavy on me about this Jesus stuff, and I didn't believe none of that, and, get saved, all that stuff. And I remember the last Christmas I was with him, I had asked for like a day or two ahead because I was going to Atlanta for Christmas Eve. And he just was like, well, you don't believe in Jesus, and that's his birthday. So I don't even think you need off. Like, why do you even celebrate if you don't even believe? And I just remember getting aggravated with him, like, what are you talking about? This is the United States of America. You can look on the calendar, and the calendar says it's Christmas Day. So we're going to celebrate Christmas whether we believe in Jesus or not, because it's what we do. And he wasn't being rude. I think the way that he did it with me, he would try to challenge my thinking. Like,
right.
Why are you making such a big deal about Christmas when you say Jesus ain't even real?
Right.
He would, and actually, that's the best way for me to learn is for somebody like challenge me in those with questions.
I was just thinking that. I feel like you received that well, or that it actually does make you think, and you do think about it when people challenge you like that.
It won't make me think about it to their face, but I'll go back later and think about it.
So I have learned.
Well, usually it's just the way I'm made. Like if I can sleep on something, we're like that.
I
in our
always say
marriage.
give you a 24-hour cycle.
Yeah, and you're smart, like you're rapid, like you figure. And I'm like, gosh, I bet she was good in school. Because like if we're trying to read something on a computer, I'm through the first 2 sentences. You've already read 4 paragraphs. I'm like, how? But I've learned I have a slow processor, and you have a fast processor, and it's just the way we're wired.
Yeah.
But I feel like we lost
Christmas.
The first
it was your
Christmas.
first, and it felt special.
It was very special. And then there were like some little practical things. Like I found out we could get Christmas boxes. Like in Florida, you got Christmas boxes, but you had to go through this long drawn out process where you had to have this printed thing and you had to check off everything. It had to be exactly what was checked off and what they approved. In Alabama, it was just, these are the things you can have, can't be over 20 pounds. So I was like, what?
And that was better.
That was awesome. That means they could just keep packing the box. So I remember my mama telling me she went to the post office and like would set it on the thing, and then it wouldn't be 20, so she'd keep adding, stuff. But I remember I got a Christmas box from her, and I got a Christmas box from my Aunt Sue, and it was just like, it was like being a kid at Christmas. Like I had food, I had good. So
it was like Christmas.
It was amazing. It was but when there was another like, it felt like a Christmas miracle. Remember I told you couldn't get books. Like people couldn't send you books. They could order you books from a publisher, and the publisher would have to send them from the That's like the prison rule, and that's like across the board.
Yeah.
But Patrick and Joanne, this was my first Christmas as a believer, and they wanted to do something, and they didn't ask me if they could do it. And they filled up a box with like 35 books out of their lot. Like they were their book. They were like used books, but they were things that they had learned from and had helped them. You know, they were my only mentors in the beginning. And they sent me this box that had like these 30 books in it. And they were books that I wanted to read. Because, I mean, there were books about, like, the Holy Spirit and, you know, different, you know, understanding, like, the Scripture and different translations. I mean, there was just so much good stuff. And they let me have it. And it was just like...
The books.
They let me have the whole box. Like
Did they even check what was inside it?
Oh, I'm sure they did.
They just didn't care.
But the rule in prison is, because you can smuggle things in books. Like, you can put things...
Yeah.
You don't get books. You can get books, but you don't get them. Like,
right.
No, but I just remember, like... Wow, this is amazing. But it was amazing because, I mean, now I had something to do. And it was something I wanted to do. That was pretty neat. And then I'll never forget, I guess, and I try to remember this every year now, especially now that I have kids, because I want Christmas to be special and what it's supposed to be. The first Christmas Eve service that I went to, it was in the chapel, and it was this guy that came in. He was a black guy. And he still had a little thug in him. You know what I'm saying? But he was just like, here's the deal. Salvation is a free gift. Like, God got a free gift for you. And when was the last time you went up to the mall and you went into JCPenney's and they gave you a free gift? Never. But he was like, you know, saying that, you know, Jesus was God's gift to the world, and he is. And it was a good service. But he got towards the end of his service, and he started talking about where Jesus said, if somebody slaps your cheek, turn the other cheek. And, you know, turn the other cheek, let them slap that one too. And he said, I got to be honest with y'all. If you slap me, I'm going to slap you back. Probably going to cuss you out too, because, I mean, I hope to be there one day, but I ain't there yet. So there was just, I don't know, something about his honesty. Like he wasn't saying it was wrong, that what Jesus said. He was saying, I ain't got there yet. I want to get there.
Right.
But I ain't there yet, because if you slap me, I'm going to slap you back. And it was something about he was just honest and real. And, you know, I've always been attracted to stuff like that. Like, you know, even if you struggle, just tell the truth. Just say it. I mean, so that made that a good service. And then towards the end of the service, there was a little kid. He looked like he might have weighed 150 pounds at best. He stood up in the middle of the service, and he said, I have a song that I would like to give as a gift here. Wow. And, well, you have to understand prison culture. You don't do that. Like, inmates don't run nothing. Don't stand up. Don't interrupt, especially free will people or the police. Don't try to push your way in. It's just, you know, the protocol for that would have been to go before the service and get the chaplain to say he could sing a song. Because, you know, in prison, everybody wants to sing a song. Everybody's got a song to sing.
It's kind of like a class. I mean, I've been a teacher of little kids. You know, everybody wants to
sing a song.
Sing a song, yeah. I mean,
yeah.
Share something. They don't say something.
Yeah, they don't really let you do that.
Yeah.
I mean, they'll tell you, do that back in your dorm. Like, this is a church service. We ain't doing all that. But there was something about him, the way he stood up, and he was like, you could tell he was scared and nervous when he stood up. But it was like they couldn't stop him. They had to let him. And so the guy just stepped to the side. He walked up there, and he sang it. We call that acapulco.
Acapella.
Acapella. He sang it acapella, like with nothing. No, there was, I mean, they had instruments up there, but nobody did anything for him. And he sang, Oh Holy Night, the stars were brightly shining. Mm. I don't know why it's making me emotional. But it was just like...
You're making me emotional.
No, but it was like, I got it. I understand. Like, and then I remember thinking, Patrick was right. Patrick was right. This is what it's about. It was like, and if there hadn't been that Oh Holy Night, then I would have died in prison, you know. it just, but he sang the long version, and it was like angel singing, And there was nobody in there that was not affected by that. And there was about 100 people in there. And then he didn't like ask for any credit or anything. He just went back and sat down. And I remember looking at him like, you could tell he was scared. It was probably his first time in prison. And like wondering, I wonder what his story is. Like, you know, how did he get here? And I never found out his story. He was in a different dorm. But I don't know, just the way that it touched me. And it really like made real for me like the miracle of the birth of Jesus. And that's the greatest miracle that's ever been performed. You know, I don't know, it touched me, but that, to this day, that is the most special Christmas I've ever had. And, you know, we go to, you know, Jamie Golden, our friend, she calls it Sexy Church, where we go to church. We've been in some pretty amazing services at Church of the Highlands. I mean, they do the Christmas thing. They do it up. I mean, I remember the first year I went with you, it snowed inside the auditorium. Like, I mean, it wasn't real snow. It was like foam or something. But I remember thinking, wow. But that little Christmas in that little prison chapel in Kilby, that was the most beautiful thing I think I've ever experienced. And then the Christmas was the same. It was like, you know, you go to sleep, wake up, I was sharing my goodies with everybody, you know, just like.
I guess I just want to interrupt you. Like you said, it was the most special, and you're making me emotional now. But like, because it's the greatest miracle, but also because now you're a part of the miracle.
Well, no, that's what it was for me. It wasn't like it was a personal thing to me. Like, I am in now because of that. And I don't know, it's just, I guess it's hard to explain, but I mean, the miracle of Jesus, I mean, it is a miracle. There's no denying that. Mm-hmm. And for me, I'm a skeptic. Like, I didn't believe none of that stuff. I thought they made all that stuff up, just like the Greeks made up the, you know, their people, Hercules and Zeus and all that nonsense. But it was beautiful. The you know, the day, the Christmas there was beautiful. You know, we got together, we sang songs, we didn't really like give gifts, but we shared everything we had with each other. You know, I think that was the first time I ever mixed hot chocolate and coffee.
Oh, yeah, that's good.
That was gross.
Oh, I like that.
That's the Alabama thing. They didn't do that in Florida. But that was, I guess that was how I just kind of got, you know, I started tiptoeing into the whole church thing, and I realized, you know, if you're gonna be part of Jesus, you know, you gotta do the church steps. But at the same time, it was like, I'm not gonna be a part of religion or, you know, any of that. And I had an old man that slept next to me. We called him Pops. He was like in his 70s, and he was always trying to get a laugh. He was a funny guy. I think he'd been in and out of prison his whole life, but he was like gray-headed, old. He slept right next to me, and that was 1996, Christmas '96, and that R. Kelly song had come out. I believe I can fly.
Yeah.
And he would put his headphones on and he would sing that song, but he didn't know we could hear him because he would get loud. And he would say, I believe I can touch the sky. Think about it every night and day. And there was something about that song that I liked because I was like, if I could fly, I'd fly to here. Jesus, make me fly. But he was my biggest critic the first couple of months because he would tell me that, you know, all this Bible stuff you're doing, you shucking and jiving.
What's that?
Shucking and jiving?
Yeah.
Shucking and jiving means, shucking means like you're putting on a show.
Okay.
Jiving means like you're trying to pretend to be something you ain't.
Oh, okay.
You ain't never heard of shucking and jiving?
No.
Oh, well
I don't think so.
that may be a prison term.
Yeah.
I mean,
I like it though.
I can't believe you never heard me say
shucking and jiving.
He's just shucking over there. That's all he's doing, shucking and jiving. But he
sounds like a prison thing.
I think it was a prison thing. But it was just a saying. It means you're not for real.
Yeah.
Basically. And he used to make me so angry, and I would argue with him. And we would get in debates over the scriptures and stuff like that. He didn't read the Bible. He wasn't trying to do the Jesus thing. But right before he left, I think he was there with me about 4 months. He, put his hand on me, and he said, son, I want you to know I've been messing with you just to challenge you. but I want you to know you're the real deal, and what you got on the inside of you is real. And when I get out of here and you get out of here, when you start your church, I'm going to be your first member. But because, I heard this saying, I don't even remember where I got the saying, but I believe it. But some people, every time I say it, somebody wants to argue with me about it. So don't argue with me, y'all, if y'all don't agree. Just say I don't agree and be okay with that. Is that you don't really know someone unless you live with them or work with them. Because when you live with people, you see them as they are. And when you work with people, like when you have a job, you're with somebody 8 hours a day, 5-6 days a week, you spend you get to know them. Does that make sense? Mm-hmm. So in prison, we both lived and worked together. So, there was no getting away. Like, you couldn't, like, if I was putting on what was going on with me, everybody would know it. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely.
So there's something, there's something to that that's a truth, I believe.
You can only shuck and jive so far.
Yeah. Yeah.
What was that guy's name, his first name? Do you remember?
I can't remember his name. We called him Pop. Okay. I'm sure he's already passed on now. He was like in his 70s. But he would give me such a fuss, like, about everything. But he finally, before he left, he was very sincere. I had tears in his eyes and was like,
He had tears in his eyes?
Yeah. He was like, I've been challenging you because I want you to keep doing what you're doing. And that little Bible you hold in your hand, you sure do know how to drive it, son. It wasn't like I was trying to be
He said you sure do know how to drive it?
He told me I knew how to drive it. I think that was a saying in there, too. I had an officer tell me that one time. You might be new at this, but you sure knew how to drive that Bible. Like, but I wouldn't.
I've never heard that either.
We weren't doing stuff like, I'm gonna give a sermonetta. Like, we would just be talking. Like, did you know this? Did you see this? This is what I learned today. Did you know you could do this? Just stuff like that.
Yeah.
But that was that initial thing. That was a good. It was a good introduction, I guess. By the time 1997 started, I figured out, I'm gonna have to figure out how to belong with these church people. Not all of them, but at least some of them, because this is who I am now. Like, this is, and I was really drawn to it. I just didn't want the fake part of it. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So I had a lot of skepticism, but it drove me into wanting to know for myself, because just because you told it to me, I don't care what you say. And just because you say your preacher told you, I don't care about all that. So that first Christmas, I had a lot of questions about Christmas. I don't know if we talked about this.
No.
So historically, like, if you were to, like, look at the Bible, like what it said about the time that Jesus was born, it was probably not December 25th. Like, that was some holiday that the church, when they became like the Big C Catholic Church, they said, Christmas Day's December 25th, we're going to name that, the day that Christ was born. Mm-hmm. And, growing up, you think, yeah, that's what Jesus was born on the 25th, it's his birthday. But then when you start, like, looking into it, you realize, they just kind of assigned that. And it didn't really bother me, because I thought if God wanted us to, like, do it on a certain day, he would have told us the day. Mm-hmm. Does that make sense? Yeah. So you got some people that will say, that ain't the day. It was like, well, what is the day? It's September. Like, well, you're just trying to make up stuff now. So I had a little bit of problem with that. But then after that first Christmas, I was like, this is like taking communion. It's symbolic. Like, this is when we celebrate. This is when we remember. And this is a holiday, which came from Holy Day. Mm-hmm. This is the day to do it. So I didn't really have a problem with that. But then I had a problem with the nativity scenes. Like, why? Well, it's just,
I have to say, this is funny a little bit, because knowing you're a 1 on the Enneagram, for all of you that know what the Enneagram is, to me, it fits right in line with
what bothered me. This was one of the first things about the Bible that bothered me.
Okay.
It was the nativity scene.
Why did that bother you? Because
all my life, by this time I'm 24, 25 years old, all my life you saw Jesus getting born in a manger. A Jesus crib, Mary and Joseph, shepherds, sheep, goats, cows, and the 3 wise men that came to kneel at the baby Jesus' feet to give him gold, frankincense, and myrrh.
I mean, sounds good to me.
But that's the story we've always been told. That's the story we've always been given. But when I started reading the Bible for myself, I realized there was no way that could be accurate. It was because it didn't happen like that. Like they're taking the gospel was written by 4 authors: Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, and it was their account of physically being there and seeing everything. Matthew's account talked about Jesus being born of a virgin. They got to Bethlehem, couldn't get in, so they had to go in a stable, and that's where she gave birth to the King of Kings. And that the angels went and told the shepherds out in the field, which were the lowest of the nastiest of the low people, that they were like people you look down on. They were like, whoever you would look down on. People didn't really care for shepherds. Mm-hmm. The angels went to the shepherds and said, today, a Savior has been born in the city of David. Go look for a baby wrapped in cloths or swaddling rags or whatever.
Manger, yeah.
And they ran and they saw and they were freaked out, and they went and they saw the baby and they saw Mary and Joseph, and it was a beautiful thing. And that's recorded in the book of Luke. But the book of Matthew talks about the wise men. It don't say that they came to the manger. It actually says when they got there that they went up in the house, and the child, not the baby, the child was sent with his mama.
Oh.
And then, but the other thing about that is, if the star appeared when Jesus was born, these are people, wise men were from the east. They saw a star because they were like star watchers or whatever. Mm-hmm. They saw a star. They had to get from like India and China and, wherever they were, all the way to Bethlehem. They couldn't have got there. They didn't have, even if it would have been now, it would have been hard for them to get there on a jet.
So you're saying the wise men were not there when he was born?
No, they would have had to make a trip. Like they made a trip. And then when they got there, they went to where they thought the King of the Jews would be born, would be where? In a palace, right?
Right.
He's the king. They went to the palace where Herod was, and he was, a little frustrated because he didn't want another king because he wanted to be king. So he called his Bible people in there, and they told him, "Oh no, the baby's coming from Bethlehem." So he sent them to Bethlehem, told them to come back to him, and then he sent out an order and said, "Go to Bethlehem and kill all the babies, male babies under 2 years old, slaughter them, kill them," because he wanted to take out Jesus.
Right.
So it was probably at least a year or maybe or months. It was not. The wise men didn't show up at the thing, and it was Jesus and Mary, the animals, and the shepherds.
I can see you're very passionate about this.
I don't know. It just bothers me. I mean, even...
Does it still bother you?
We don't have the wise men on our nativity set.
We don't?
Well, you got your mom's nativity set. She did, but I always take them. I always take them out.
I did not know this.
They're not there. They weren't there.
You've taken out our wise men from our nativity set?
Yes.
Where did you put them?
I didn't throw them away. I mean, the wise man is significant, but it don't need to be in the nativity set. I mean, it's a miracle. Okay. Hang on. I'm not anti-wise men. I mean, if you read the story of the wise men, these were people that studied the stars. These are like zodiac people. And they saw a star appear the night that Jesus was born, and they were like, ooh, we got to go find that star because, this is pretty significant. And they searched and came from, 3 or 4 or 5 countries over. And in them days, that was quite a trip. You might not even make that trip in a lifetime. You might not even make it back. So that in and of itself is a miracle, and it's beautiful. But let's just put it where it belongs. Let's put it in,
I mean, details are important.
Years
but I'm
so
like,
later.
It's okay.
Well, it actually says, if you read in the book of Matthew, it says the wise men entered the house. They went in the house. They didn't. Right. So they didn't live in the stable. He was just born in the stable.
Wow, I can't wait to go upstairs and confirm where are our wise men.
Go look it up. I just, but I also don't want to. It's like the Santa Claus thing. Like when I was growing up, I believed in Santa Claus because they went out of their way to make that such a big ordeal. And when I found out, when I was 9 years old and I found out Santa Claus wasn't real, I was like, y'all have been lying to me my whole life. Like, how can I trust anything? Like, now I got to rethink the milk, the cookies, the cake that he ate out of, the footprints, the little piece of beer that we found on the fireplace. And, when we got married, I told you, when we have kids, we're not doing Santa Claus.
Yeah.
And when Lula Mae got old enough to start talking about Santa Claus, I told her, I said, that ain't real. I said, I'll tell you the story of St. Nicholas. He was a real person, and, this flying through the sky on reindeer, like, stuff ain't real. And
she won't not believe.
She looked at me and said, Daddy, you just don't believe, but I believe.
Obviously, you're not getting any gifts, Dad, because you don't believe.
Well, what did I tell her?
You said, well, at least when you get older, you're going to know I didn't lie to you.
You're going to know that. But I don't ruin it for her. I play the game.
Now that you've told her the truth.
But she'll start that stuff up with me, and I'm like, remember, Daddy don't believe in all that because Daddy believes in reality.
And then the wise men is a whole nother thing, I guess. We're going to have to... Because until recording right now, did not know how strongly you have felt.
About the wise men?
Yeah, about them being incorporating in the
okay, let's come to a compromise.
I mean, I don't care so much.
I don't mind the wise men being there. Let's just don't put them at the nativity scene. Like, let's leave the nativity scene with Mary and Joseph, baby Jesus, the animals, and the shepherds, because that's the way the story went.
Okay.
And then we can take the wise men and put them on the other side of the room, maybe, and say, they came later with all these gifts of myrrh and frankincense and all this good stuff. That's crazy, but I mean, that was where I was at. I had so many, initial conflicts with this Jesus stuff. And it wasn't the actual Jesus stuff, it was the religious people, the inmates, the free world people that would come in. And I just needed it to be in the scriptures, from the scriptures. And if it wasn't, then I didn't want anything to do with it. And, to an extent, I'm still that way.
Yeah.
I mean,
I might ruffle your feathers a little bit, but I definitely think you still have that tendency, even though, because I tend to be on the opposite end of the spectrum. I should probably be more driven into scripture, but I definitely am more people oriented and community, and I want to learn from others and conversation and relationship, and but whereas both I think are important. But
they are, and that's why I need you and you need me, because together we make up Team Jones.
Yeah, we sure do.
And no, but you do help me. You help me not be so. What's the word? Help me not be so
rigid.
Rigid is a good word. I feel like Jesus uses that word with me a lot. Like, you gotta relax, son.
Loosen up your buttons, babe. That's a song.
I went through a lot of that, but honestly, it helped me determine what I believe, and it wasn't because somebody else told me it.
Yeah.
It was because I found it, I knew it, I learned it, and then 100% of the time, God would confirm it to me.
I love that, yeah.
And not always when I asked him to, but or either he would change my understanding when I got to understand something. But I still don't want to do religion. Honestly, I think religion is one of the biggest things in the world. It excludes people, it hurts people. Even the most recent, 9/11, that was religious stuff. That wasn't economic, or that was religious stuff.
We're definitely going to unpack that in the near future.
Well,
religion.
Yes, I want to do a whole one on denomination, what I learned about denominations, doctrines, and dogmas and all that stuff. But I would take things that Jesus said more serious than, because I didn't spend a whole lot of time reading the Old Testament because I felt like that wasn't for me. I would try to learn the stories. But I would read, when I read the Bible, I wanted the red letter words, because those are the words that Jesus spoke. Those are the ones that have to have the weight. Y'all can go find whatever you want in the book of Joel or whatever. But especially that formative time for me, I needed to know what he had for me, what he wanted me to do. And I would take things so literal, where he... On his Sermon on the Mount, where he said, don't pray for other people to see you. I took that literally. I learned how to pray while I was at Kilby there. And I learned a little bit when I was in the first couple months there when I was in Montgomery County Jail. But I learned how to pray, but I didn't want to be the guy that was going to be up praying and hollering and carrying on. He said, when you pray, go into your secret place, and your Father will be there with you, and he'll listen to you, and he'll answer you. So I would get under my covers at night, and just pull the covers up and pray. That was where I prayed. And then I started getting bothered because it said you're supposed to pray in the morning, like in the Psalms and stuff. So I started making myself wake up before everybody so I could have prayer time by myself, me and Jesus. And those were some of the sweetest times that, because I always thought, all right, well, I got this Jesus thing going on, but I ain't do all that praying stuff. Like, how do you do all that? But I learned, like, prayer is just talk to me and then be quiet and let me talk to you. So it's just like sitting down with you. And, I do that to this day. Like, I try to get up at least an hour before everybody else so I can have my Jesus time. And it's not like a religious thing, but I just need to sit and process, let him talk to me, talk to him, get a little understanding from the word, and, then I'm ready to face my day.
Yeah, get a word.
Yeah, a word. I think I was, like, so convinced of the power of not just the scripture, but of Jesus talking to you, like his spirit. Even though I didn't really understand what the spirit stuff meant, it was just like what happened in the last episode where I got one word from Jesus after I read the story of Joseph about a sentencing technicality, and it set me free. That one little word, it wasn't even like a word. It was just like I had a memory flash, and I knew that he was trying to show me something. I called my lawyer, and they popped me out of life without prison. Life without prison. Just like that. It was over. And that,
that is crazy. That's neat.
So
miracle.
During that time, at Kilby, you don't have a job. So unless you're a permanent party, I ended up being at Kilby for 6 months. And you generally stay there 2 or 3 weeks. Still don't know why I was there that long. Most people are not. But, like, looking back on it in hindsight now, that was my foundation. That was my time to, like, get grounded and get, start, like, let my faith get some roots in it. I learned a lot from a lot of people about what to do, but I probably learned more from a lot of people, free world and inmates, about what not to do. If that makes sense.
Yeah.
And I've always done well with having, like, a positive and negative example, because, you got, like, somebody on this side that's all about the word, and then somebody on this side that's all about, let's just flow with the Spirit. And I know I need to be somewhere in the middle of that. Like, I don't need to be, I hate to use politics, but, you have, like, right-wing people, left-wing people.
Yeah.
Like, you don't need to be all the way over on the left. You don't need to be all the way over on the right. You need to find the middle, and that's where I am. That's where Jesus is. I believe that. Even in politics, I believe that. Like, I'm independent, 100%. You ain't going to label me with no Republican or Democrat or any of that stuff. Wow. I think our time's about up.
Yeah, that was very enlightening.
Sorry about the wise men stuff. I feel like I did go off on a little bit of a tangent there, but I would come to find, like, hundreds of those over the next few years, and I just didn't want it. Like, I didn't want, like, whatever we've, like, embellished and made up and added to and, put our own little spin on it. I wanted, like, the no spin. Like, just give it to me straight, like what it is. And really, following Jesus for me has always been very, I've complicated at times, but he always gets me back uncomplicated. It's very simple. It was, I feel like he always takes me back to the first miracle he performed was when he was with his mama, and they was at a wedding.
Water into wine, baby.
They were having a party, and they ran out of wine, and his mama came to him and was like, "Look here, Jesus, we out of wine." And he said, "Woman."
Shut your mouth.
He didn't say shut your mouth, but he was stern with it. He said, "Woman, my time ain't yet. It's not, this ain't, my time ain't yet." And she just kind of looked at the servants and says, "Whatever he says to do, do it." And she spun around and walked off. And he was like...
Did she spin around?
Well, in my mind, when I read the story, it's like she spun around, like, I'm done with this conversation. That's how my mama would talk to me. We're done with this conversation. Just do something about the wine.
Yeah.
Spun around and walk off, but she told them, whatever he says to you, do it. And it was so complicated what he told them to do. He said, go put some water in them jars. All right, now pour them out. And it was wine. So it's like...
You mean it was simple what he told him?
So simple.
Yeah.
No, but I'm saying you would think it would be complicated.
Yeah,
Like, we're going to turn water into wine. We need to have some kind of complicated process. But it was so simple. And really, that's all it is. It's whatever he says to you, do it. Mm-hmm. If he says to you, forgive. If he says to you, send that text, even though you don't like them, send a text. If he says to you, whatever he says to you, it's just as simple as just do it. Mm-hmm. And then it always yields results. So, you got anything else to add?
No, that was a lot. You
still worried about your wise men?
I'm not worried. I don't know what I don't know.
All right. Well, in the next episode, we're going to talk about like free world church people and some of my experiences with them, especially initially, and like the prison Jesus followers. And I said in the last one that I encountered a new phenomenon that I would tell you about later. We're just going to have to I'm going to have to leave you hanging on that one because I'm not ready for that.
It's coming.
Well, the problem with the podcast is it's hard to say what you're going to say next because we're not really scripting it. We're like going chronologically over time. And I've been spending a lot of time in my journals and going back through, like trying to put myself back in the mindset of, at this time I'm 4 months in with this Jesus thing. I'm going to prison. And then all the stuff that I didn't know that I do know now. I mean, not that I know everything, but I know a lot more than I did then.
You're revolting against wise men being at the manger.
Yeah. So y'all, if y'all are putting the wise men at the manger, y'all are wrong. But anyways, thanks for tuning in. This is fun. We're really enjoying the feedback we're getting from you guys. Please keep it coming. If there's, any comments, suggestions, you can look us up on our Facebook, Instagram, Straight Outta Prison Podcast, or you can go on our website, teamjones.co, not .com, teamjones.co. And you can send us a direct message there. Appreciate you. Thank you. See you next time.
Bye.
Hey guys, thanks so much for tuning in to the Straight Outta Prison podcast. For more exclusive content, head over to our website, teamjones.co/podcast.
Yes, you can subscribe by clicking on the Become a Patron button, and that's going to get you access to our For Real Reel, which is very different than the Highlight Reel. Some very juicy content there.
Good stuff. Or you can look us up on Facebook and Instagram, Straight Outta Prison Podcast.
Yes, that takes the story to a whole new level where you can see some of the people that James talks about in his story and see some of the places that he's been. I've been loving it, and you will too.
Prison recipes.
Yeah, all the things.
Good stuff. We'll see you soon, guys.
Thanks. Bye.
Bye-bye. Guys, I hope you enjoyed this recipe. For more, look me up on Facebook and Instagram, and now TikTok. Look up Chef James K. Jones. And if you're getting anything out of these videos, please hit the like button, the subscribe. If you never want to miss a recipe or anything I do, hit the little bell and you'll get notifications. All right, so cheese. We got them summertime haircuts.
We got summertime haircuts.
Summertime.